something a little close to my heart. The first property I ever bought, how I bought it, and how and why I kept it. Stay tuned.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes. Myself, Michael Berger, Mark Novak, episode 416. All about Mark, this one. Buying his first property, why he kept it, the conditions then, how the last 20 years has gone, and what we think for the next 20 years.
It's a love story. It's a love story. And I always, it's something that I've shared with hundreds and maybe thousands of people over the years, how I did it to relate to how they can do it. And being a real estate agent, talking to first home buyers all the time, this is great to document.
I wouldn't mind, good morning, Philip. I wouldn't mind if you just start on how media was then, similar or not similar, with always talks of booms, always talks of busts. Like we last on our, and the reason I say that, just to put in maybe so people can relate, because I know on Friday or Saturday when we last did the show, we brought up April 12 months ago, April, market down 30%. April now, market up 30%. Basically, has it always been a head F? Or was it just rose sunshines back then?
This property purchase was 24 years ago, yeah? I was 19, and the word back then was recession. So in 93 from 94, we went into a recession, the Australian economy, and the Australian economy, it was low, it was shit. So, yeah, and Michael, it always has been. There's always been great excuses not to buy. There's been a lot more excuses not to buy rather than to buy, let me put it that way.
Yeah, because I remember the reason I just want to people, so because people can bring up a million excuses why the relation of buying back then is not similar now, but I think there's just as many similarities and parallels between media, comparison between, and then also the cost of buying. We just did a quick, well, I'll let you get into it before we get to that conclusion.
What do you mean? The
parallels, a lot of what we did with the repayments then compared to now. But I think we can talk go through the story first.
Yeah, so the property I bought was in Curl, which is near Manly, two beaches up. 19 years of age, young real estate agent, and at that time, it was really, really hard to get a deposit. There was no stamp duty incentives from government. There was no first home buyer incentives. And look, I think when you always talk about stuff to younger people, you always paint the really hard and the really sad story, because you try to illustrate that it's easier now and you should do it now. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like, you can do it. But, it certainly was the hardest thing. And I've always said to people, the first property you purchase is the hardest. You have more to lose. Your body's on the line. But something that we brought up earlier, Michael, was interest rates were sitting at about 7.5 to 8.5, more like 8.5% at that time. The property was for sale through our office. I used to be at a company called Harbord Real Estate, the professionals. We had it for sale, and it was for sale. I bought it for $277,000 back then. Views out to the ocean. It was an amazing property. Always wanted to live there, and it was rented for $3.15 a week. And the tenant that was in there paid a little bit more for the property because they had a dog. So they paid an extra sort of $15 to have a dog in a unit, and you could in this particular building. So that's it there. The memories. But I was always like, one day I'm going to live there. One day I'm going to live there.
Yeah, be the Bachelor 19, seeing water views.
Yeah. Do it up. I'll do a kitchen, bathroom, and do it up. And yes, that was it.
Good 1970s block. But one thing I wanted to bring light, like, let's just run some figures. You buy a property at 277. You're paying 8%. Let's say the loan. Let's say you do it at 20% deposit. It's still going to cost you $20,000 a year with an income of 15 grand a year. And then I was like, Mark, like a studio now with interest rates at 2%, it's going to, because we did one the other day on first home buyers, and we're like, your payments would be 20 grand a year with an income of 20 grand a year plus all these incentives. So it's sort of the dawn drop, like, yeah, purchase price is higher, like entry level now is double, triple that. Obviously not for a like, that's more, but I'm just talking entry level. What it's costing you is the same, but what you're getting back is a lot better. So you could argue it's better conditions now to buy than back then.
I think it's, yeah, look, if I had to say, is it easier to buy now than back then, I'd probably say yes. But even if you said it was like for like, I think that the magic is probably more in your head and getting it done and accomplished and behind you in your head. That's the part that just really cooks you. Morning, Goey, how are you? That was the hardest bit with buying that property. Now, the second hardest bit was actually holding the property. And we ran some maths this morning going through, typically units sell fast more frequently than houses. And we were using the example this morning of, because I've owned that unit for 23 years. It was, what if I chose to trade in and out of a unit worth that amount of value with the trend? Because the trend is that people dispose of properties like this after 5 or 7 years. And what did we find, Michael?
Yeah, so Unit 5 is a good comparable because it was sold in 1993 and again in 1998, similar when you bought it, then 2008, 2012, 2016. So if you add up, say, 6% for cost for all these transactions, agent fees, stamp duty, it's pretty easy to work out because all those fees have been the same since, I think, the 80s, really. You're looking at about 130K in cost. And if you look at, so let's say the person who bought it in 1990, let's use him or her, they've purchased a property for 1990 and doing 5 sales, which isn't uncommon. There's 130K they've lost in costs. They basically could have bought 2 properties. The whole purchase.
Or even more, because that was 50%. That represented 50% of the initial purchase, these transactional costs. So my point is, guys, that it's been a real slow burn buying this property, owning this property. There was a lot of times where I actually, on this place here, I had my balcony, part of my balcony fall off. So because the building was so close, so you're meant to go, Michael, what?
Yeah. Oh no, most people rush.
Oh my God, shit. So what it got, because it was so close to the ocean, the rust got into the balconies, and actually it's called concrete cancer. The building got concrete cancer.
The worst. And everyone sells them.
It was all, yeah. And everyone had to put in 20, 30 grand into the building. But most people in the building just hunker down and move forward. But there's been through my life, there's been a lot of kids and business and stuff like that happening with the building. There's been some really buying a house. There's been really good excuses to dispose of the property along the way. Yeah. Some really good ones. Very compelling. Over. I know 23 years maybe doesn't. Like 23 years was a really long time, and when you look at the shit that happens in 23 years, it's a shitload of time, and there's so many opportunities.
A few extra years than me. What can happen? A full-grown human. I've only just turned 29, so it's a long time. My whole life can happen. It's a pretty long time.
Yeah, I bought it when you were 6.
Yeah.
But didn't sell it. And part of the magic in property is the time in the property. It's not whether I bought that property at 277, 250, or 300. It didn't really matter. But what really mattered is the time owning the property. That's where the magic's been. So the magic wasn't getting in at the age of 19 or 22 or 24. Even that was irrelevant. How young I was buying the property or what I bought the property for. The real relevance came into how long the property was being owned for, and that's what I encourage investors to do. It's a slow burn. And Michael, it restricted me to do other stuff. So because I had to sell it to do that, or I had to sell it to do this, but instead I was like, nah, well, I've just got to go a bit slower now. I've just got to wait. And I waited to do stuff, but it really paid dividends hard.
And that's sort of the point. It's not time in the market. It's not timing the market. It's time in the market. A lot of buyers miss out on properties for $5,000 here, $5,000 there. And I don't know, the way I look at it, it's not even your money as well. You're basically getting 80-90% lend. So the difference in repayments is minimal, but the growth in there. Like I see people, you see them miss it, stay looking to buy something for 6-12 months, and they keep missing out for $5,000. It's just get something, especially if you're going to move into it. But as an investment, just let it ride. Anything else you want to add on to that?
Man, that's it. Look, it's something pretty close to my heart. It's Beach Street Curl, 2-bedroom when I was 19 years of age. If you just tuned in, still own it. How I did it. Actually, what was interesting, Michael? Getting the deposit together. Credit cards.
Credit cards, because they weren't as strict then. Like, well, banks didn't talk to each other.
So you can't do that these days. But
being ambitious, really knowing your funds coming in, just make it work.
Well, at that time, I wasn't really earning much commission. 19 years of age, so with the magic, can I be even more brutal about this? I think that the money I made out of the property was smaller than the money I made out of my mind space. And what I mean by that is how that drove me at the age of 19 to buy that property, how that drove me at work and in business was much more powerful than how much the property value drove. Because think about it, I was 19 years of age, and you can all position. You may be 19 if you're watching, you may position yourself as a 19-year-old. I'm 19. I've gone and put the money on a credit card for the deposit. I've gone and got the stamp duty ready to go, because there was no first home buyer incentive for stamp duty. So you had to pay your own stamp duty. And I've gone out and bought a bit of an expensive property. What that did to my mind and the pressure that put me under just made me work like a crazy man. And thank God that I did. And I understand people, that some people don't have the capacity, don't want that capacity. But for me personally, it actually worked to put myself under the pump while all my friends were going to nightclubs and staying up till 6 o'clock and doing that 7 days a week. I was doing it 5 days a week and staying up till 3. No, I just, it allowed me just to channel myself. So I still had holidays, still had, nightclubs and stuff like that when I was 19, but it really just focused me so hard. I reckon out of today, guys, that's the biggest lesson if you're young about buying a property. It just taught me good habits, and it gave me a really good focus.
And moderation, like we all know mates who, everyone's got the friend who'll go out and spend $1,000, and then you got a mate who'll go out and spend $200, and then you've got the tight ass who'll spend 50 or nothing. But having that commitment of buying something will just put you in the moderation where you can still go out, have fun, but be smart. Don't go over the top knowing you've got bills to pay the next month, really. It can just hit you straight where you're not as frivolous. And I think that's where that really helped you.
Yeah, it's like having a child. I think you just man up a little bit. With a mortgage as a first home buyer. So it's healthy debt. Yeah.
Yeah, and what the guy always says, don't you need to live in it? Back then, they didn't have any stamp duty concession, so it didn't matter. There was no stamp duty discount.
That's right.
So you didn't have to qualify for anything.
And I always thought to myself that I should live in it for capital gains tax in case I dispose of the property. But most of me said you're never going to sell this, and part of me was like, you better live in it so you don't have to pay any capital gains tax. But it ended up being one of those things where I met Lee, met my wife, and have kids, and that. Or it was like, you know what, I'm never really going to live in this place anyway. Just leave it as an investment. Interesting.
Yeah, and you're never going to sell it, so just leave it. It doesn't
just use the equity. It only really meant that by selling it, I got to release that 20% out of it in addition to the 80%. So I've always hocked the unit. I've always used it for to buy other investments, but I've hocked the 80% out of it, and by banking standards, I've left the 20% in there. So, I got to a stage where I realised, well, I just got to work with that 80% all the time and just always leave that 20% in there, and you sort of become a bit programmed towards that.
Yeah, we maybe do another show on that just so people can understand the leveraging. Because in a good market like now, everyone who's got a couple of properties should be getting new valuations, even if you're not thinking about doing anything.
Yeah. And it just bunny hops you into the next one, into the next one, into the next one.
Correct. All righty, that's a wrap. Thank you. Anything else you wanted to add on that? Just go a little bit over.
Have a beautiful week, everyone. Hope you rested after this awesome Easter.
Yes. Cheers.
Thanks, Mr. Goodyear. See you, bye.